Hello, Kalla here, and welcome back to this series of videos on the trip I took to Bavaria in Germany back in May of this year. When we last left off, we were just arriving into Munich after our second location in Nördlingen. If you haven't watched the previous two videos and you're interested in Nördlingen or Nuremberg, then maybe watch those, but you can also just watch this one if this is what you're interested in. And so, let's continue. Once we got to Munich Hauptbahnhof, we then needed to get public transport out to where our hotel was. Once again, staying in a hotel of the B&B Hotels brand, this one being Musicom, which is out towards the west side of Munich. This meaning that from Hauptbahnhof we would need to catch the S-Bahn, the S1, which coincidentally is also how you get to the airport in Munich, which meant that we had a bit of a preview of what that would involve, because the S1 to Munich Airport is a splitting train. Only the carriages at the back of the train go to the airport. Please, I would say please remember this, but they make absolutely sure you know this. One at the station before you get on, also inside the carriages with the extremely useful information signs will tell you where your section of that train will terminate. As long as the carriage you're in says on its screens that it's going to the airport, you're fine. Don't worry about it. But anyway, we had to get that only as far as Musicom, and then head to our hotel. This one being not a completely new building like the hotel in Nuremberg, the room wasn't quite as good, and it had a sort of weird feature with the shower room and toilet, in that they shared one sliding door. You could basically either close the door to the toilet or to the shower, and not both. But hey, if you're travelling as two people, you don't need to close both of those doors at one time. There is still plenty of privacy, even just with only closing one of them. So I'm fine with this. What I wasn't so much fine with was that the shower section of the shower room didn't have a door or a curtain separating it from the rest of the room, which meant that the floor tended to get a bit wet in there. You had to be very careful where you put your clean clothes. But even so, it's still got all the features you expect from the B&B hotel. Your code-locked door, and the same options for obtaining food and drinks from the lobby. There was a drinks vending machine that actually had beer in it, which is definitely something I did not expect. The hotel itself was close to the station at Musicom, and also close to a supermarket, which was great for us. Having settled our stuff into the room at the hotel, we then headed out for our first exploration of Munich. Given that the local transport in Munich would also be covered by the buy-in ticket, we might as well make use of it, right? So we set out to first go and see Schloss Nymphenburg, or Nymphenburg Palace. To do this, we caught the S1 back down to Lyme and then walked from there. I'm pretty sure we could have got a bus or something to cut out some of that walking, but we weren't really sure what we were doing with buses. And it was a nice walk. And we got to see a bunch of ducks and fish, swans and geese on the river as we headed up to go and see this very pretty building that we didn't go inside. It was very pretty from the outside. Honestly, I didn't even look at what it cost to go in there. We were just here to see the outside. after which we found a tram to take us down to Sendlinger Tor to go see that. I'd hoped that this day we might have been able to see the Glockenspiel in Marienplatz, but the timings didn't quite work out for us. Well, the timings didn't quite work out for us to go and watch it actually do its thing, but we did actually go and see it. And this is where we kind of messed up. Now you see, when we were changing trains at Donauwörth to go up to Munich, we heard and saw football supporters. And we went, oh, okay. It would appear that Bayern Munich is playing today. Now I had obviously considered this, and this is part of why at this point, which was about 6 p.m. or so, I was like, we should probably just head back to the hotel. Just so like we don't get caught in any crowds of football supporters and things. I should have taken a better look at the transport map, because while from Marienplatz we could quite easily get U3 back over to Musicom where we were staying, there are 2 U-Bahn routes that go through Marienplatz, and the other one goes to the football stadium. Which meant that when we got down to the platform for the U-Bahn, it was packed with football fans and covered in police. Lucky we didn't want to get on the U6, but the platform that we had to wait on was very busy. I mean, the U3 was quite busy as well at that time. We headed back to Musicom, visited the supermarket to obtain ourselves some food for the evening, and I sort of wish we'd picked up something for the next day's lunch. While we knew from the opening times of this supermarket that it was going to be closed on Sunday, we did not expect the amount of things that were going to be closed on Sunday. But we'll get to that as we go through into day 7. Now, you know how I said that us ending up in Nordlingen on the weekend of the Railway Festival was probably a coincidence? What was also a coincidence was the fact that, turns out, while we were in Munich, that they had a Disney 100 exhibition. I swear that I did not know about this until like 2 weeks before we went. Don't ask me why I was looking up Disney stuff. As my friend says, I have the mouse brain. And therefore, we were going to see this exhibit. Because hey, we're here, the exhibit's here, I want to go see it. Now, the Disney 100 exhibit at the time of recording this, and also at the time of that trip, existed in 2 places in the world. There was one over in America, and one here in Munich. Both with slightly different items on display, but the overall setup of the exhibit was, I believe, very similar. Now, I will say it wasn't cheap to visit this exhibit. It was, seem to recall, around 28 euros per person, but I will put the exact price here. To see all of these things from the Disney archives, and me as a massive Disney nerd, I was willing to pay that for 2 people. The exhibit was housed in a hall over at the Olympic Park, which was very conveniently just a short trip on U3 from our hotel. And of course, because I've been waking up at a ridiculous time of the morning this entire trip, we got there early, which meant we got to have a little bit of a stroll around the Olympic Park. There was some kind of bicycle festival there, so there was a whole bunch of booths and things, which we just sort of wandered through while we were waiting, and then headed in to visit the Disney 100 exhibition, which, as I said, was full of items from the Disney archives and a whole bunch of information which was, in this case, available in both German and English. And honestly, it was really cool, and if you get the chance to go to it, and you're big into Disney and its history and stuff like I am, do it. Would I go again in London if it's the same stuff that's in Munich? Maybe, but I would prefer it if it was the other set of items. But yeah, there was a lot of things, from drawings, props, ride vehicles from Disneyland in California, models of various kinds, a whole section on, like, music, which included this very interesting thing that I watched with the headphones provided, which was How Far I'll Go from Moana, but it swapped languages every so often. And it's kind of amazing how it just flows, and actually how similar Moana's singing voice was in most of the languages that film was out in. It was very cool. I think my favourite things on exhibit there were probably the sections about the parks, and also I really liked seeing Pert's carousel horse from Mary Poppins. I believe the other version of the exhibit has Mary's horse. Like, that's the sort of similarities yet differences that there are between the two current exhibitions. And then obviously I also bought merch. I picked myself up a t-shirt and also a mug. Mostly because the t-shirt didn't specifically say that it was for the Munich leg of the tour, but the mug did. We'll talk about that mug again later. And after going to look at Disney stuff for me, it was time to go look at more trains for my friend, over at the Transport Museum. Which, hey, not just trains this time. There was cars and bicycles and everything. It was, once we got over to that area, when we realised quite how difficult it was going to be to get ourselves lunch this day. Because obviously what we would have done if it wasn't a Sunday would be probably to just go down the road near this museum and go to, like, the small supermarket there or one of the bakeries that was immediately nearby and just get ourselves something to eat. But it was a Sunday, and so a lot of these places were closed. So we had to go a little bit more of a distance to find a bakery that was open and get ourselves another pretzel covered in cheese. They were good. Before we then went to explore the Transport Museum. Now, I don't know if it's just how much I'd been putting my feet through on this trip already, or whether just the floor at this museum was particularly hard, but I was suffering. Lucky for me, this museum had benches. I also unfortunately didn't get to experience the thing I wanted to do most at this museum. They have a little maglev system that you can apparently use, but it didn't seem to be open while we were there. Like, there wasn't anyone manning it. Which is a pity, because I kind of wanted to ride the tiny maglev, but oh well. The rest of the museum was interesting enough anyway, and there was plenty of English in the signs in this museum as well. It was also a little amusing to see things from England in this museum as well. Like, they had a section of the railway between Manchester and Liverpool that the rocket went along, and it's like, didn't expect to see that here. It was a nice museum, and I really liked how the first hall was laid out, so that, because it kind of looked like a road with all the vehicles that were on display, like, actually on it. And they had, like, traffic lights and things in there as well. It was pretty cool. I just kind of wish I wasn't as worn out as I was by that point, so I could have looked around a little bit more of it, because I may have spent a fair time sitting around. This museum is also where I messed up, again. You remember I said I bought a mug? Guess who fumbled and dropped her shopping bag on the tiled floor? Guess who still needs to figure out how to repair a mug? So that did kind of put a little bit of a damper on the rest of my day. After the museum, we went for another little explore. We went to see the area where Oktoberfest is held. Obviously this was May, so it was nowhere near that time of year. But that is a huge area, and I kind of wonder what it looks like with all of the stuff for Oktoberfest on it. And then we headed to Marienplatz to actually go and watch the Glockenspiel go. It does its little show at 11 AM and 12 PM, and also at 5 PM between March and October. So we were headed there for the 5 PM showing. We were there a little early, but not early enough to get seats in the square. Those were already full way before we got there. So we decided, rather than just standing around waiting, we'd go and explore down a couple of streets and go see what was around and then come back just beforehand. And so here's a little bit of the glockenspiel performance, because I didn't record the entire thing because it was way longer than I expected. After experiencing that, we headed back for the hotel to finally make use of that pizza that we'd seen that you could get in the B&B hotels back in our first one. Since, you know, it was a Sunday and we couldn't go to the supermarket to get anything, we were like, this is the perfect day to try out that pizza. I mean, obviously it would cost more than if you bought your own pizza and had an oven to cook it in. But someone else is cooking it for you, and it was also served on actual plates. So we then sat in the little bar area and ate it there. It was perfectly serviceable frozen pizza. Now to day 8, my final full day in Germany. And the plan for today was to visit Neuschwanstein Castle. This day got off to a later start than other days have, and we ended up picking up lunch to go from the supermarket at about 10 AM before ending up at Munich Hauptbahnhof a little before 11. Today was the third time we'd be picking up the Bayern ticket. The Bayern ticket would get us our train travel and also the bus at the other end. Now, I'd looked up in advance how we were going to get to Neuschwanstein, and it seemed fairly easy. It's just 2 trains and then a bus. Turns out that when I was visiting, part of that second train journey had to be conducted by a rail replacement bus because they were doing engineering work on the tracks. So that made things a tiny bit more complicated. Ordinarily, you would just be able to take one train from Munich Hauptbahnhof to Buchloe? I'm pretty sure I haven't pronounced that right. And then another train from there to Füssen. And then from Füssen, the bus up to Hohenschwangau. Whereas when we went, that second bus was only going as far Lengenwang. And from there, we had to get the German rail replacement bus. Also, we had arrived at Munich Hauptbahnhof slightly too late for our train and had to wait more than half an hour at the railway station. The train parts of the journey were perfectly pleasant, and to the second bit you could start to see the Alps, which was very, very cool. And then we had to deal with the rail replacement bus, which, one, it was very, very busy. We had to stand the whole way, which would have been fine if the bus driver didn't make some very sharp turns and very fast starts. You need to hold on. Regardless, it was a relatively easy situation. The bus was there at the train station when our train arrived, and it took us to right outside the train station at Füssen, which was also where the bus to get up to the castles went from, this being either bus number 78 or 73, which both go from basically the same place, and they make it very obvious where they're going, because it basically says castles on the bus. These buses also had the same very useful screens that all the other public transport had, with each stop listed. I have heard that there are some buses here in the UK that do that nowadays, so good for them. The bus took us up to the small village of Schwangau, where you could see Neuschwanstein Castle up on the hill in the distance. There are two castles here, Neuschwanstein and Hohenschwangau. Now, the thing is, you could only get inside each of them on a tour. I'm not a guided tour sort of person. And also, that's way more expense than I want to make. So like, if you want to go inside these castles, you're gonna want to book a tour and then be on a coach and everything. You can book those from Munich. We didn't, because, as I said, not tour people. So to start out, we took a short uphill walk to go and see the front of Hohenschwangau Castle, and then turned around and went to take the longer uphill walk that would get us to Neuschwanstein. Now, you don't have to walk. There are shuttle buses that'll go up you do have to walk up some hill. Regardless of what method you use for this, you do have to walk up a bit of hill at the end. But there are methods to get you up most of the hill that don't involve walking. There's a shuttle bus, and there's also these horse carriages, which I've discovered when I got there. Those carriages themselves are actually electric vehicles. So I feel that's kind of cool, because it means these horses aren't pulling the entire weight of the carriage and everyone on it the whole time, which I'm sure is a lot better for them. But we decided to walk. Once again, I'm not a hill person. There are multiple routes up here. We chose to take the same route that the horse carriages go up. I say chose, that's just the route we found up. We didn't find the route you could only go on foot until on the way down. But if you take the route that the horse carriages go, it is a well-tarmacked track, and it's not too steep. The footpath-only options are a lot steeper. It also has semi-frequent benches that you can sit on to recover and just watch the horses go by. I did eventually make it all the way up the hill, obviously, and didn't die. I should note that the trip from Munich and all the way up to Hohenschwangau took around about, just under 3 hours, which we were then going to have to do on the way back as well. Good thing we didn't need to do a whole lot while we were there. Looking at the timestamps on my photos, it took me about a little over half an hour to walk all the way up to the castle, which, honestly, I thought it would be longer than that. The official map actually says that it takes 40 minutes, and yeah, I guess that's about what it took. And that was with about 3 breaks on the way up. And then, you know what I did when I got all the way up to the top with the lovely view of Neuschwanstein Castle? Yeah, of course I bought a fridge magnet. There was a tourist shop up there. And I got this lovely 3D fridge magnet of basically half of the castle. We took in the view, took some photos, and then started to work our way back down again. Stopping briefly at a restaurant that's most of the way up, which is at about the level that the horse carriages and shuttle bus go up to, because they sold a wonderful looking snack. This snack was called, and once again, please forgive my pronunciation, Quarkbällchen, or quark balls, which were basically kind of like a donut ball, and they were covered with powdered sugar. It was so lovely, and just what I needed after all of that work. There were 3 of them, and I don't remember exactly how much it cost. Maybe around €3 or so? But they were very tasty, and very much worth it, after going all the way up to the top and slightly back down again. Turns out my friend had actually seen someone eating some at the bottom of the hill, and was going to suggest we got some when we got back down again. But we got some, like, most of the way up the hill. And yeah, very tasty. Recommended. And then it was back down to where the bus would pick up, where I obtained myself a pressed penny. There was a machine there. Actually, I obtained the pressed penny before we went up. there were toilets there, but they were charged. It was €1, which is, once again, another reason to carry change around. Then we waited for the next bus to go back to Füssen, and then back onto a rail replacement bus, and then back on our trains again, which was, once again, fairly simple. We definitely spent more time on the trains travelling here than we did actually there, but then again we just had the outside of some castles to look at and some shopping to do, so. And finally we come to day 9, the return travel day. We didn't go out and explore anymore on this day because by this point we were a little bit dead, and we didn't have a whole lot of time because our flight was at about 12:30, so we needed to be at the airport at least 2 hours before that. We arrived perhaps a little too early at Munich Airport. No. The trip to Munich Airport was, as I said on our arrival day at Munich, quite easy because all we had to do was go get the S-Bahn from Musicom, make sure we got on at the correct end of the train, and then just take it all the way up to the airport, which for this one we got a single ticket just to the airport. Just the single ticket from Musicom to the airport cost €9.30. It would be slightly more than that from central Munich because Musicom was in zones M and 1, so in order to get out to zone 6 we only needed a 5-zone ticket because we were technically also in zone 1. From a station that was only in zone M it would cost €13. It was a very easy trip, even with our luggage. So there were specifically areas for luggage and things in those trains, although it was a little too busy and we had to stand up the whole way. We got to the airport slightly earlier than perhaps we should have done because it turns out that check-in wasn't actually open yet when we arrived. Munich Airport is fairly large and there's a lot of back and forth to do things. So from where the S-Bahn arrives, we had to walk basically to the other end of the airport to do our check-in. And then there was a lot more zigzagging going further up in the airport as we went through the process. But even with that, it wasn't too difficult. It was fairly well signposted. The flight before ours that morning had actually been cancelled, which resulted in our flight being completely packed on the way back. So that was slightly less fun. It meant there was also quite a queue to check in. There was nothing that we could find in the way of self-check-in computers at Munich. It did appear to be all join this large queue and wait for this literal one check-in desk. But as I said, we were there in plenty of time, plenty enough time that we were fairly early in that queue since the desk hadn't actually opened yet. And we had enough time within the airport itself to find a bakery and obtain, yeah, okay, it's a pretzel again. I'm sorry. And with that, we reach the end of this trip. Please let me know if you've enjoyed these and what I could do to improve similar videos in the future, if you want similar videos in the future. And if you've enjoyed your time here, please consider subscribing to the channel. You can also follow me on social media, which is linked below. Most of the time I stream video games on this channel, and you can find the schedule for those over on social media or here on YouTube in the community tab. And I hope to see you around another time. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and this is Kalla signing out. See ya, bye bye.